Before the video starts, I just want to acknowledge that yes, I did wear the same shirt for the entirety of this video. Please, nobody comment on it. Hello friends, welcome to another video. I did dye my hair. If you want to see that, it's in the last video. I really like this color. I always end up going back to purple, but I think it works. Anyways, March is Women's History Month, and in honor of that, I wanted to have a video dedicated to women. So reading books that are by women, about women, just showing general woman power. So I was trying to gather my options. I was trying to see what was out there. I went to the bookstore and they had a table specifically dedicated to the month, which was really cool. So I didn't have to think too hard about it. I could just kind of consider what they had provided, because otherwise I would have explored the whole bookstore and gotten way too overwhelmed at all the possibilities, because there are so many different routes that this could have taken. But I settled on a couple. I don't know which ones I'm going to read. I kind of just have a generic pile of books by women, and then I'll pick up whichever ones I'm in the mood for. But also any book that I'm about to mention is also just a general recommendation, even if I don't read it. I think for sure that you should, because these are a lot of really strong authors, and I think they all offer some perspective on the female experience. So just putting it out there, even if I don't read them, I think you should still check them out. And I did also try to make sure that the authors were more diverse, just because it's Women's History Month, but it's every woman's history month, you know? You can't just confine it to one type of woman. So I tried to have a variety of different stories, some fiction, some nonfiction, some about history, some about just living, whatever. Okay, here's an overview, but I'll just give you a brief description in case you're interested in any of them. I picked up Valley of the Dolls by Jacqueline Suzanne. This is a story about a group of friends in New York. They move their way up in the entertainment industry and then find out there's nowhere else to go. It was published in 1996. It's an all-time pop culture classic. And it interested me because it said it tackles women's rights, gay rights, and drug addiction. I don't know, this is the only one that I haven't heard anything about, but I thought I'd consider. Cast by Isabel Wilkerson. I've talked about this book in almost every single video since the start of this year. I've been very slowly making my way through it. This is nonfiction, and it's basically just talking about inequality in America. And it just talks about how we're categorized into these different groups, and you don't even realize how ingrained into society all of these different ideas are. Pachinko is another book I've been meaning to pick up, but I'm just so intimidated because all of these are long. I don't know why I did this to myself. But this is a story of 4 generations of immigrants. I believe they're moving from Korea to Japan, but if you're into the books that follow timeline and go down the generations, this one might be really good. I've heard the ending is a little bit disappointing, but I don't want to say anything until I've read it. It's a little lady for Ladies Month. Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. I genuinely have no clue what this thing is about. It says 15-year-old Lauren lives in a gated community with her preacher father, family, and neighbors, sheltered from the surrounding anarchy. She suffers from hyperempathy, a debilitating sensitivity to others' emotions. Again, I don't really know what it's about, but I've heard good things about it. Feminism by Mickey Kendall. I believe this is nonfiction, but it's another book about how we just kind of accept these systems into our lives and we don't really consider if they're all that inclusive. And even feminism, which people are fighting so hard for, doesn't include all women. And the last book I have is Miko Kawakami's Breasts and Eggs. I'm actually already 100 pages through this one, so we're gonna be talking about it later, but you're really just following a couple women existing in female bodies and taking up space, and you're just hearing about their experience with existing, how it feels to occupy a female body and to consider, you know, your responsibilities, the things that are expected of you, the things that you should be striving for, just all that, all the pressure that comes with being a woman. I don't really know where it's gonna go, but it's very personal. It's very much just following these characters' stories and their thoughts, and you're just kind of experiencing life with them. Again, I'm not gonna read all of these. I don't know which ones I'm going to gravitate towards, but of course I will let you know when I get to them. And I will say normally I do like to have a bunch of b-roll of me just sitting and time-lapse reading, whatever, just content to fill up the video, but this one I think I'm going to stick to just talking about the books. I'm pretty sure Jack Edwards does it a lot, and it really frustrates me because I wish I could see the reading process and see the real-time reactions and not just get a thought-out response, but also I need a break from editing. It's a lot easier to edit talking videos than it is to edit all these aesthetic little videos. This is a lot less pressure, just me sitting here talking, telling about things. And also I impulsively picked up 2 doubles the past 2 days, which is when I was going to be reading these books, so now I have a couple days to get through whatever I'm getting through, and I don't want to have to worry about taking out my camera all the time and then having to sit down and edit at the end. So this is going to be a very toned down video. It's going to be a lot more straightforward. We're just going to talk about what I'm reading, what I think about it, and then move on to the next one. Hopefully that is okay with you, because that's what we're doing. It's already happening. I'm so sorry. You're here to watch it, so hopefully you stick around, but if not, that is okay too. Alright, this is a very, very long intro. I'm going to go continue reading this book, and I'll catch up with you guys if I have any thoughts. Hello, it is currently 6:30 p.m., so it's been roughly 8.5 hours since we last spoke, and I finished the first book. And I did not send myself my thoughts. Give me 1 second. I think my primary thought after finishing this book is just that it reads like a podcast. Not in a bad way, not in a boring way, just in an intimate way. In a very sit down and spill your thoughts type of way. This book is split up into 2 different stories. In the first part of this book, you're following Natsuko, her sister, and her sister's daughter. I want to say she's maybe in her 30s, and her sister comes to her and says that she wants breast implants. And there's just general thought on how people feel the need to change their bodies, and the expectations that are put on women to appear a certain way and to seem more appealing to other people. And you also hear the perspective of the daughter through her journal entries, where she is not concerned with breast implants. She's like 10 years old, but she is getting into the age where her body's changing. You know how it goes. So while you're seeing her mom worry about getting breast implants and looking a certain way, the daughter is going through a completely different thing. She's completely having to readjust to her body, and she does not like the changes that are happening, and she doesn't like the expectations, and as to be expected. So the first section of this book is very much just focused on women fitting standards and why are things the way that they are, and it's just character thoughts. That's why I said this reads like a podcast, because there are conversations in here. And obviously when you're reading a book, you can rewrite the scene as many times as you need to make it flow, but this book really just has like the raw conversations as if you're actually having them. So there will be awkward pauses, and there are people who go on tangents, and it doesn't go anywhere. They just kind of ramble, and the pages just let it happen. So they'll be talking about how these expectations affect them, and then it'll go into childhood memories, and it'll just start going down this path, and it doesn't need to go anywhere. They're just sharing experiences. And then the second book in this, it's like a 10-year time skip, something like that. So Natsuko is in her 40s. She's living by herself. She doesn't have a romantic partner. She doesn't have kids. She doesn't have anything like that, but she is considering it. But she has no desire for an intimate relationship with a partner. She just wants a child. She wants to have that feeling. She wants to meet this person that doesn't exist yet. So the whole second part of this book is her just debating, should she have a kid, and how will that affect her? How will it affect the kid? How will it affect people around her? Along with that, she is a struggling author, and she's trying her best to succeed, and I really love that it focuses on an older woman. I think we need so much more of that in media, to see a woman who is trying to be successful later in life, because so many things act like you have to do everything in your prime, because as a woman you lose value as you get older, which is just so not true. And I think this book shows an example of a woman who, she's close to her 50s, and she's still able to do all the things that she is wanting to do. She still has the full capability. It's so nice to read for a change. And in the second book, you're getting perspectives of all of her friends, from her sister, from her niece, from everybody that you met in the first section, and from obviously the new people that she's met in this decade in between. And they're all sharing their experience with either parenthood or childhood, saying either that they loved being a parent and that they fully support her, or that they had a really rough childhood and they don't believe that people should have kids because you shouldn't bring a child into such a terrible world. And you're just watching her thoughts go back and forth about if she is allowed to have a child at her age and without a father, because she's figuring out how to go to a donor and just do it all on her own. But this book just feels like how it feels to listen to a podcast where people are just spilling out their thoughts. There's no right answer, there's no good and bad, there are just people having experiences and sharing them with each other. Sometimes it can be disorienting, specifically when she's talking about dreams that she has, because there's no clear distinction between reality and the dream, which makes sense because that's how it feels to start dreaming. Sometimes you'll be awake and you don't even realize it, and then you're asleep and things are happening. And I think it's a really good representation for how it feels to exist in a female body in this world. So that was Breasts and Eggs by Kawakami, and I will say I always forget, but we should mention translators because that is a whole job in itself. So this was originally Japanese, but it was translated by Sam Bett and David Boyd. Gotta shout those guys out for making this book accessible to me. And I think for the second book of this video, I'm actually gonna read Parable of the Sower, purely because literally minutes before I started recording this, I was watching Penn Badgley do, I think, the Wired, the question thing, and he mentioned that in the past decade, this is one of 2 fiction books that he's read.
I've read 2 books of fiction in the last 10 or 11 years. Swing Time by Zadie Smith and Parable of the Sower. Favorite book? I'll stick with Galapagos.
Not really sure what this is about, but that seemed like a sign, so we're gonna test it out.
And back to life. People who don't know or care what an NFT is.
Hello friends. It's currently 11:15, so it's been 3 hours, but I'm only 20 pages into this book. I want to read it. I've heard that it's a good book, but I can't stop watching the newest season of You. So, this book is set in the year 2024 or 25, and there's a big focus on both faith and family. I also didn't realize this book is from the 90s and there's a sequel to it. In my head it was a standalone historical fiction, but that is not true at all. It's a post-apocalyptic dystopian world. It takes place in a world where water costs more than gas because climate change, and the fact that technology got so overloaded that now people just don't have any of it. I only got 20 pages in, so I can't tell you anything about the actual story itself. I'm gonna save that for tomorrow. The one thing I will say, it could just be that I'm consuming different media, but I feel like there are less futuristic movies or books or any type of media than there were in like the 90s. Because in the past, you have stuff like this, Back to the Future, Ready Player One, all these books or movies or games or whatever, all this media that's focused on their predictions of what the year 2020 something would be. And I feel like if people are making those right now, they're not anywhere near as popular. And I was just thinking about why that might be, and it's probably because in the 80s and 90s technology was improving in ways that people didn't think was possible, so they were hopeful. They were trying to think, where could it go from here? All those videos of people predicting what the technology would be in 10 years. It's like, oh, now we have a flat screen TV instead of this brick. But I feel like now we're living in a time where you can't even predict because it's moving too fast. It's moving too fast to even enjoy at this point. It's like with TikTok trends, how trends are supposed to cycle out every couple of years, and we're cycling through trends within months. Technology is just happening and we're witnessing it. So it's not even fun to make media that predicts where things are gonna go, because at this point, it would probably be in like 2 weeks that this thing is happening, and even if you did guess something that's happening in a couple years, it's frightening. Which goes along with what this book is focusing on, which is climate change and economic changes, and how the world is going downhill, I'm assuming because of the technological advancements. I don't know why the world in this book is the way that it is, but if it's anything based in reality, I'm assuming it's something to do with advancements in technology or, you know, construction and all that stuff. All the big businesses that are tearing the world apart. And before, it was fun to think about, and it was fun to predict what could happen and to be optimistic and to think that the world would be a better place. But now we're living in it, and we've gone too far, and everything's going downhill, and it's just not fun to think about what the future is going to be anymore. Anyways, that's my thought for the night. I'm gonna go watch the entire rest of the season. I will catch up with you tomorrow. Hello, it is the next day and I've made it to page 119 of this book. You know that there are a lot of people doing a lot of crime. The police do nothing to help, and when they do show up, they just take your money and then blame random people. So, you know, not that different from right now. Lots of corruption within the government and within all of the sources of power in this whole book. I will say it introduces you right away to a lot of characters, and I was not following how they're all related. I don't think you need to know that. It is just kind of showing how many people are living in such a small space and how they all tie in together, but you don't need to know their specific connections. There are, I think it's at 11 houses that live within this fenced-in community, and if you go outside, you're probably gonna die. It is concerning how many of these post-apocalyptic dystopian stories are relating to our real life. I don't like it. I don't like where this is going. But this book is making me so angry I had to put it down. Yesterday and today, the way that I wanted to get through these books, it's very intimidating to think that you can finish a whole book in one day, so the way to make it easier is to put it in sections so that you have little goals to achieve along the way. So for example, I looked at my day and I said from 2 o'clock to 8 o'clock, I'm going to divide this book up and I will have to read 40 pages within each hour, and then by the end, I'll get however far. So instead of feeling like this book is dragging on forever and I can't do anything else, I read for those 40 pages and I have the rest of the hour to do whatever I want. But I'll probably want to read to get even more ahead, so I end up reading by choice regardless. The goals are just kind of incentive to make it feel more productive. So if you're ever feeling stuck with books, I definitely recommend that. I do think it helps. But I put this book down and I started making a playlist on Spotify of angry songs because this is frustrating me so much. It's not the fault of the author. I think the author is doing a great job at portraying exactly what it's coming across exactly how it's supposed to, and it's supposed to make you angry when you consider how relevant it is. The main character, she's only 15. She feels powerless. She is seeing the world fall apart. Big corporations are taking advantage of all of these poorer people. Nobody cares about the environment because they either think it's too far gone or that they can't do anything or whatever else it is. The goal isn't to do good. The goal isn't to be great. The goal is to survive. And it makes me so angry how many people are genuinely just living like that. Where you don't have enough money for food, you don't have any clean source of water, you don't have even security. There are no guarantees, and that is so frustrating. This book does have a lot of darker topics, so I would look at the content warnings. There are a lot of times where the characters mention unaliving because the whole world is just, it's too much to deal with and there's no hope. But this book is eerily relevant and it is filling me with rage, so I'm having to take breaks while I'm reading it. This shouldn't be the way that we live. It just shouldn't. And it sucks to think that no matter how much an individual wants to change the world, there is nothing that we can do because it's the big corporations who aren't affected. It's all the people who are gonna die before the world ends, so they don't care. And it sucks. And I think this book captures that feeling really well. It is 9:30 p.m. and I did finish this book. I stayed pretty on track with that plan of reading 40 pages an hour for most of the day, but towards the end the book started to get kind of slow. I don't know that this is a story that I will carry with me and think about frequently, but I do think it does exactly what it came to do. This book takes place over a couple of years. It starts in 2024 when the main character is 15 and goes up until she's 18 in 2027. You start off with her in her hometown, which is just a fenced-in little community of like 11 families, and the world is not a kind place outside of that fence, so they all stay in there, they all stay protected, but things are not going well. The world is on fire, nobody has enough money, you know how it goes. There's also a drug that people are getting addicted to where you just want to set things on fire, and they start burning down entire villages, which then leads Lauren, the main character, to start traveling in search of anywhere better than where she is. And the reason it moves quickly is because it is separated by day, so it's written out like it's her journal, and it drives you forward because you can see the actual timeline progress that's happening. The second half of this book is full Fifth Wave vibes, if you've read that. Very much just people on the run, going down the roads that are all abandoned because cars are not working right. A bunch of people who are just trying their best to survive or kill each other. But like I said before, there are a lot of characters, and in the beginning it doesn't really matter because it's just showing how many people live there, so it doesn't matter too much if you're following each way that each person connects. But then you get to the second half of the book where she is on her adventure, and on the way she meets up with different people, and they all start traveling together to find a better place because it's safer to travel in a group. And for a while I really liked how they were incorporating new characters. It felt very natural and you feel like you get to know them, but then it just got to be so many characters I was not remembering who was who, which ones of them had kids. It was just a lot of names, and at some point I just stopped caring about who anybody was. But I think for what this book is, it is done really well. And the whole big thing that's driving them is the main character is coming up with her own religion. And it's really interesting to hear the ways that she describes it, because she says she's not creating it, she's just discovering it. That this religion is something that's always out there and that she's just finding it out. And each chapter has a little poem or a little phrase that she's using as part of the power of her religion, as something that's gonna keep them going. So I think I'd give this a solid 4 stars, because I do think it got a little bit boring at the end, and there were certain points that were a little bit hard to follow just because of how much information was given to you that didn't really matter in the end. But I mean that in the least judgmental way possible, because I do think it is a really well-written story. I think I would like to read one more book for this video, and I'm thinking Hood Feminism. It's less than 300 pages, and it's also nonfiction that is extremely relevant to women's history. I will say I don't know if I'm gonna finish this book, just because tomorrow I have to pack because the next day we're flying to New York, and I would like to edit and post this tomorrow as well. So however much I get done with this tonight or tomorrow morning is what I will tell you about, and then I'll wrap this video up, and that'll be that. This is a book about the problem with modern day feminism, just talking about how feminism is still focusing on privilege of only certain people. I can't read because there's a ring light in my eyeballs. This book takes aim at the legitimacy of modern feminist movements, arguing that it has chronically failed to address the needs of all but a few women. Sounds good. Hello, we've made it to the end of video wrap-up. I read 3 books this week written by women about stories of women, and I had a really great time. And I'm gonna move this because the camera won't stop shaking. Let's get into it. So for this weekend, these were the 3 books that I chose to read. First one I read was Breasts and Eggs by Miko Kawakami. You're following the story of 3 women who are either learning how to exist in their bodies or are wanting to change the way that they present in order to be more appealing. And the second half of the book focuses heavily on if a woman should get pregnant when she is not in a relationship. Can she, as a single person, have the right to have a child? And is she able to? And how would the child feel? I think this book offers a lot of perspectives on that topic because everybody's gonna have something different to say. People are gonna have bad experiences in childhood that make them not want kids because they don't want anybody to go through what they went through. There are some people that had great childhoods, but they grew up into parents and they didn't know what to do. There are people who had good childhoods and they grew up and they love being parents. And this book doesn't feel like it has an answer either. It's just sharing these different perspectives, and I really appreciated that. I also love that this book focuses on a woman in her 30s and 40s still striving to reach her goals and still trying to just exist, which is something that a lot of media shows, is that when you get older as a woman, you're not able to do things, and that's simply not true. So I like that even though she's close to 50, she's still trying to be an author, she's still trying to be a mom. And there's no guarantee that either of those things are good or that they're the right decision or anything like that, but that is a very realistic thing. A lot of people are older and still want to do things with their lives, and I appreciate this book for sharing that story. The second book, which I read pretty much entirely in one day, I read it all yesterday, besides the first 20 pages, is Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. I went into this thinking it was going to be historical fiction set in the 1900s, and I don't know why I thought that. I picked this up in the science fiction section, there's no reason why I should have thought it was anything else. You're following Lauren, she's 15, she lives in a fenced-in little community, and the world is not doing well. She knows that things could get worse, and she's trying to warn people to, hey, get ready, do anything to prepare because something could go terribly wrong, and we can't act like we're safe in here forever. Along with that, she has hyper-empathy, which means she can feel whatever other people are feeling, so if somebody is in pain, she feels that same pain, which comes into play later when they're on the run and she has to potentially kill people, but she will feel that pain as if she's the one dying. She's on the run with a group of people, and along the way, she starts explaining to them this religion that she has in her head. She explains that she has discovered these ideas and that she stands by them and she believes in them wholeheartedly, and she would like to create a whole community based around the ideas that she is writing, which I feel like I would appreciate that plot so much more if I had more ties of religion, which maybe that sounds weird, but I grew up going to church school, but like we'd never really paid attention, we never really cared, and I feel like if I had a closer tie to religion and then I left it, this book would feel a lot more impactful just because I could relate to the main character more. But that's by no means a criticism, it's just something I was thinking about. There are moments where this book felt really tense, but I don't think I ever genuinely feared for the characters. Maybe it's just I didn't connect to the characters because there were so many, so it didn't feel like the stakes were very high, because if something were to happen, it wouldn't have mattered to me. But I will say I did have a dream last night where I was running around in a crowded place and we were running next to a road and we were concerned that there was going to be fire or tumbleweeds or wind or something, which I'm assuming came from this because there's a point where they're running alongside the highway and there's just a blazing fire on the other side of it. So take from that what you will. And then the last book that I read is Hood Feminism by Mickey Kendall. I will say I did not finish this book just because this time tomorrow I'm going to be in New York and I've done nothing to get ready, so I can't sit and read all day, which it's really frustrating me because I keep doing that in videos. I keep having goals and then making some excuse as to why I didn't finish. Genuinely, I've just been the worst at planning these videos. I've been recording up until the day of posting when it's a video that should have been started a week before. I did write out a full video plan for April, starting with the days that I'm gonna record, maybe days that I'm gonna edit, days that I'm gonna post. I have it all written down. Hopefully I will have some more completed videos. My time management skills are they're lacking right now. But this book talks about the current feminist movement and how it's nowhere near as inclusive as it needs to be. Because even today when people are talking about feminism, they're typically talking about how to help the most privileged women and how to make them feel more equal, which completely disregards all the other women who are less privileged. Stuff like white women arguing for equal pay when people of color are getting paid even less than them. And if a certain group improves, they act like that is an improvement for everybody, which invalidates the other person's struggles. So far, I am really liking this book. I like that it not only touches on race, but it touches on class, it touches on gender, it includes trans women. That's great. Genuinely, I recommend that everybody read this book. It's really unapologetic with everything that it says, and I think it's something that a lot of people don't think about because they just don't want to. If you're not the one struggling, it's really easy to pretend that it's just not a problem, and I think this book offers a really good perspective for anybody who is interested in being more inclusive, anybody who wants to be more educated on the struggles of other people. You know, genuinely though, I recommend that everybody read this. But that is all I have for this video. Happy Women's History Month. I hope you're all educating yourselves and trying your best to accept everybody. That's not even specific to this month, that's just in general. Try to be good people. If you like my face and you want to see more of it, you can subscribe to this channel or my main channel, Riverbxnd, where I post music content. Also my Instagram, Spotify, Goodreads, and Storygraph, which I will link in the description for you. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one. Bye!